What would you do if a person in a lab coat told you to deliver a painful electric shock to a stranger? You'd refuse, right? You'd stand up for what's right. The shocking and deeply uncomfortable truth is, you probably wouldn't. In one of the most famous and ethically controversial experiments in history, ordinary people, just like you and me, were willing to inflict what they believed was extreme, agonizing pain on another human being. Why? Simply because an authority figure told them to. This raises a terrifying question. Are we truly in control of our own actions? Or are we just puppets dancing on the strings of authority? Stick around, because what you're about to learn will fundamentally change the way you see yourself, society, and the very nature of human freedom. That chilling scenario wasn't a hypothetical. It was the basis for Stanley Milgram's groundbreaking experiments on obedience at Yale University in the 1960s. His findings sent shockwaves through the world of psychology that are still felt today, forcing us to confront the darker aspects of human nature and our deep-seated deference to authority. Why do we have such a powerful, almost instinctual tendency to obey, even when it clashes with our deepest moral convictions? In today's deep dive on VF Growth Tutorials, we're dissecting the psychology of obedience. We'll walk through the unsettling details of the Milgram experiment, explore the powerful psychological mechanisms that compel us to comply, and most importantly, we will equip you with the knowledge and strategies to recognize these forces in your own life. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a guide to reclaiming your personal autonomy and strengthening your mental resilience. If you're ready to challenge your own perceptions and unlock a new level of self-awareness, you're in exactly the right place. And if you believe this kind of content is important, help us grow by taking a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The stage is set inside the Milgram experiment. To truly grasp the power of the situation, we need to paint a vivid picture of what participants experienced. Imagine being recruited for a study on memory and learning at the prestigious Yale University. The environment is sterile, professional, and exudes an air of scientific importance. You are introduced to the experimenter, a man in a gray lab coat who is stern, impassive, and clearly in charge. You are also introduced to another participant, a mild-mannered, likable man in his late 40s. The experimenter explains that one of you will be the teacher and the other the learner. You draw slips of paper and you are assigned the role of teacher. What you don't know is that the draw is rigged. The other man is an actor, a confederate in the experiment, and he will always be the learner. Your task, you're told, is to read a list of word pairs to the learner and then test his memory. For every wrong answer, you must administer an electric shock, increasing the voltage by 15 volts each time. You are led to an imposing shock generator. It's a metal box with a row of 30 switches, starting at 15 volts, labeled slight shock, and going all the way up to 450 volts, which is ominously labeled 30. To convince you it's real, the experimenter gives you a sample shock of 45 volts. It's unpleasant. It's real. The learner is strapped into a chair in the next room, electrodes attached to his wrist. You can hear him through a speaker. As the test begins, the learner gets some answers right, but soon he starts making mistakes. At 75 volts, you hear a grunt of pain. At 120 volts, he shouts that the shocks are becoming painful. At 150 volts, he cries out, "Experimenter, get me out of here. I won't be in the experiment anymore. I refuse to go on." He complains of a heart condition. The screams become more agonized with each increasing shock. At 300 volts, he pounds on the wall and desperately screams. After 330 volts, there is only an eerie silence from the other room. What do? You turn to the experimenter, your heart pounding, you protest. This is wrong. But the experimenter, without emotion, responds with a sequence of 4 prods. Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. And finally, you have no other choice. You must go on. Before the experiment, Milgram surveyed psychiatrists, students, and middle-class adults, asking them to predict the results. They unanimously predicted that only a tiny fraction of participants, perhaps 1 in 1,000, a sadistic fringe, would go all the way to 450 volts. The reality was horrifying. In the most well-known variation of the study, 65% of participants, 2 out of every 3 people, administered the full 450-volt shock, long after the learner had fallen silent. These weren't monsters. They were ordinary people, accountants, teachers, barbers. They were us. and they obeyed. Why did they obey? The psychological forces at play. The 65% statistic is so counterintuitive to how we see ourselves that it demands a deep explanation. It wasn't that these people were inherently evil. Rather, they were caught in a powerful web of situational forces designed to elicit obedience. Milgram identified several key psychological mechanisms. The most critical is what he termed the agentic state. This is a mental state where an individual sees themselves as an agent for carrying out another person's wishes. In this state, they no longer feel responsible for their own actions. The responsibility is deferred to the authority figure. You could see this in the debriefing interviews. Participants would say, "I was just doing what I was told." The experimenter in the lab coat explicitly facilitated this shift by stating, "Although the shocks may be painful, there is no permanent tissue damage, so please go on." When participants asked who was responsible if something happened to the learner, the experimenter would calmly reply, "I am responsible." This simple sentence was a powerful psychological release valve, allowing the teacher to abdicate their personal moral code and continue. The second major factor is the legitimacy of the authority figure and the context. The experiment took place at Yale, an institution with a global reputation for integrity and knowledge. The experimenter was dressed in a lab coat, a potent symbol of scientific authority. The entire endeavor was framed as a noble pursuit of scientific knowledge about memory. We are socialized from birth to obey legitimate authorities, parents, teachers, doctors, police officers. This conditioning is so deeply ingrained that questioning a legitimate authority figure, especially in an unfamiliar environment, feels unnatural and requires immense cognitive and emotional effort. Furthermore, the experiment's design used a slippery slope. The shocks increased in small 15-volt increments. There was no single dramatic moment to quit. Each step was only slightly worse than the last, making it difficult to find a clear line to draw. It's easy to justify giving a 180-volt shock if you've already given a 165-volt one. This gradual commitment is a well-known psychological trap, often called the foot-in-the-door technique. By the time the participant realized the truly horrific nature of their actions, they were already deeply invested and had gone through a series of self-justifications to get there. It wasn't one giant leap into evil. It was a series of small, seemingly insignificant steps down a very dark path. Understanding these forces is the first step toward resisting them. And if you're finding this deep dive valuable for your own understanding, please take a second to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. Your support allows us to keep making videos that explore the depths of the human mind. The variations when obedience crumbles. The most hopeful and instructive part of Milgram's research comes from his numerous variations of the experiment. By tweaking the situation, he was able to identify the factors that can break the spell of authority and empower individuals to dissent. These variations are the key to understanding how to cultivate our own freedom. First, he tested the effect of proximity to the victim. In the baseline study, the learner was in another room. When Milgram moved the learner into the same room as the teacher, where they could be seen and heard directly, the obedience rate dropped from 65% to 40%. The suffering was no longer an abstract sound from a speaker. It was a visible anguish of a fellow human being. In an even more extreme variation called the touch proximity condition, the learner refused to put his hand on the shock plate after 150 volts. The experimenter ordered the teacher to physically force the learner's hand onto the plate. In this condition, obedience plummeted to 30%. It's one thing to flip a switch. It's another thing entirely to physically force pain upon someone. This demonstrates a crucial point. Empathy is a powerful antidote to blind obedience. Humanizing the victim makes it exponentially harder to be an agent of their suffering. Second, Milgram manipulated the proximity and legitimacy of the authority figure. When the experimenter left the room and gave the orders over the phone, obedience dropped to just 20.5%. The physical presence of the authority figure was crucial to maintaining the pressure. In another clever variation, the experimenter leaves and an ordinary man, another Confederate posing as a participant, takes over and insists they continue, suggesting they increase the shock level each time. With the mantle of legitimate authority removed, obedience fell to a mere 4%. This shows that we don't just obey anyone. We obey those we perceive to have legitimate, credible authority. But the single most powerful variation, the one that holds the most important lesson for all of us, involved the power of dissent. In this setup, The real participant was joined by two other teachers, who were both Confederates. At 150 volts, the first Confederate refused to continue and sat in a corner of the room. At 210 volts, the second Confederate also refused. With the social support of two dissenting peers, the spell was shattered. A staggering 90% of the real participants also refused to go on. This is a monumental finding. It shows that the courage to disobey is contagious. Having even one ally who validates your own moral unease can provide the strength needed to defy an unjust authority. You are not alone in your thinking, and that social proof can be more powerful than the command of any authority figure. Obedience in the modern world, from the office to social media. It's tempting to dismiss the Milgram experiment as a historical curiosity from a more naive time. But the psychological principles it uncovered are timeless and are at play all around us, every single day. The lab coat has simply been replaced by other symbols of authority. Consider the modern workplace. An employee is told by their manager to use a misleading metric in a report for executives. They know it's unethical, but the manager is a legitimate authority figure, and they might say, "This is how we do things to hit our targets. The responsibility is on me." This is the agentic state in action. The pressure to conform to the company culture, even when it drifts into morally gray areas, is a powerful force that can lead good people to do questionable things. Think about high-pressure sales environments where salespeople are pushed to use manipulative tactics on vulnerable customers. They are often just following a script handed down by an authority figure, deferring their personal responsibility for the sake of their job. The same dynamics are present in social and political spheres. We see groupthink where members of a political party or social movement are pressured to adopt the group's entire platform without question. Dissenting on even one issue can lead to being ostracized. Pundits, influencers, and political leaders become the new experimenters in lab coats, and their followers can be pushed into an agentic state, defending actions or statements they might otherwise find abhorrent. The rise of social media has created new, potent forms of authority. Algorithms curate our reality, pushing us into echo chambers and subtly shaping our opinions and behaviors. Influencers, with their millions of followers, can command a level of trust and obedience that can be used for good or for ill. Cancel culture can be seen as a modern version of the obedience test, where the pressure to conform to the prevailing online consensus is immense, and the punishment for dissent is swift and severe public shaming. The slippery slope is also evident online. A person might start by sharing a slightly biased article, then an aggressive meme, and before they know it, they are engaging in hateful rhetoric they would never use in a face-to-face conversation. Each step is a small escalation, making it hard to see how far they've drifted from their own moral baseline. These modern examples show that the authority trap is not a relic of the past. It's a fundamental part of the human social experience. This is getting really deep, and I hope it's making you think. If it is, let me know by hitting that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to VF Growth Tutorials for more content that challenges you to grow. Cultivating Disobedient Thinking, a practical guide. So how do we protect ourselves from the authority trap? It's not about becoming a reflexive contrarian who rejects all authority. Legitimate authority is essential for a functioning society. It's about cultivating conscious, critical, and constructively disobedient thinking. Here are 5 actionable strategies based on the lessons from Milgram's experiments. First, actively question authority. This doesn't mean being disrespectful. It means being curious. When a boss, a leader, or an influencer asks you to do something that feels off, pause and ask clarifying questions. Can you help me understand the purpose behind this? What are the ethical implications of this approach? Who is ultimately responsible for the outcome here? This simple act of questioning shifts you out of the passive agentic state and back into a state of active, critical thought. It re-engages your own moral compass. Second, take absolute personal responsibility. Make a conscious commitment to yourself that you are the final authority on your own actions. Repeat this mantra: I am responsible for what I do. Reject any attempt by an authority figure to absolve you of that responsibility. This is your non-negotiable moral foundation. When the experimenter said, "I am responsible," the empowered response would be, "With all due respect, I am the one flipping the switch, so I am also responsible, and I will not continue." This mindset is your shield against the agentic state. Third, find your allies. Remember the most powerful Milgram variation? The power of dissent. If you feel uneasy about a directive at work or a trend in your social group, find a trusted colleague or friend and voice your concerns privately. You may be surprised to find they feel the same way. Having just one person validate your perspective can give you the courage to speak up or refuse to comply. Actively build a network of independent thinkers. Fourth, practice small acts of constructive disobedience. Courage is a muscle. It needs to be exercised. Start in low-stakes situations. Politely disagree with the consensus in a meeting and provide a well-reasoned alternative. Question a minor policy that doesn't make sense. Choose not to participate in office gossip. These small acts build your confidence and make it easier to stand firm when the stakes are much higher. Finally, relentlessly humanize others. The easiest way to get people to do terrible things is to dehumanize the victim. The military does this by using terms like collateral damage. Corporations do it by reducing customers to data points. Actively work against this. Put a face to the people who will be affected by your actions. If you're asked to enforce a policy that will harm customers, imagine one of those customers as your parent or friend. As Milgram showed, empathy is a powerful brake on blind obedience. By integrating these 5 practices into your life, you can transform yourself from a potential subject in an obedience experiment into a conscious agent of your own free will. So we return to the fundamental question: are you really free? The lessons from Stanley Milgram's chilling experiments suggest that our freedom is a constant struggle, not a guaranteed state. We are all wired with a deep-seated tendency to obey, to defer responsibility, and to succumb to the pressure of the situation. The authority trap is real, and its mechanisms, the agentic state, the legitimacy of authority, and the slippery slope of gradual commitment, are potent forces. But the story doesn't end in passive compliance. The variations of the experiment illuminate the path to autonomy. We learn that empathy is a powerful shield, that questioning authority re-engages our moral compass, and most importantly, that the courage of a single dissenter can inspire a revolution of conscience in others. True freedom isn't the absence of authority. It's the presence of a well-developed, independent critical faculty. It's the conscious choice to take responsibility for your actions. The real authority is the one you must answer to in the mirror. What did you think? Did the 65% statistic shock you? Let me know your biggest takeaway in the comments below. And if this video gave you a new perspective, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to VF Growth Tutorials for more deep dives, and share this video with someone you think needs to see it. Thanks for watching, and keep growing.